Hello, welcome back to City Planner Plays, where we are building the city of Verde Beach, and truthfully, we're actually building Playa del Mataro in Verde County today, and taking in views of downtown Verde Beach, and it's exciting to actually be able to spend some time in this place now and understand why it's special and why they'd want to build a city here. You can see that this is absolutely spectacular. Going for a walk through here would be something that is really, really special. And today we're going to make this place even more special. We need to add in transportation options and start to build phase 2 of this development and detail some of these areas out. We have these parks here, for instance, that need some detailing. We're going to bring the metro in, and we're going to talk about ferries. So without any further ado, I do want to jump right in and talk a little bit about some of the comments that you guys left. So the very first comment I wanted to address is about the design of the city, and I was really hoping that you guys would follow the breadcrumbs, and about 9 of you did. This design has been inspired by Seaside, Florida, which is the home of The Truman Show. If you've watched that movie, one of Jim Carrey's finest, in my opinion.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
One of the reasons I decided to use that as an inspiration for this build is because of how highly walkable it is and what a nice downtown core it has. It really supports the entire community, and it's a reason why it's a special place to live. It's also a new urbanist community, and that's what this is. Really, that's the foundation of this community. We can't build it like we used to, but we can build it like we do now in a way that it harkens back to times of old, but has some of the modern amenities that we'd expect. So now let's think a little bit about what we're going to do with these fences. That was another comment that was brought up, that these fences are just a little bit much. And I want to see if we can do anything a little bit better. So the nature reserve fence is certainly something that we could change these to. And I agree, they're shorter, they make a little bit more sense, and we are going to go with them. So I'm going to go through and upgrade all of these fences I put down, with the exception of those that are flanking some of these trails. I think that those, we can keep those a little bit bigger. And I inadvertently upgraded some, and I actually like the way it looks, so we're going to change all of them. Okay, and I think I got all of them up. I'll probably still find a few more, though. I'll just keep an eye out for those throughout the entire episode, and I will start to transition over to using these. The only place I'm going to keep the city fences is near the city hall, where I think it is appropriate to have that kind of fence. But when you take a look at these, they're much lower. They feel more appropriate. And I think they look pretty darn good, with the exception of some of this height stuff that we're going to have to hide with some landscaping. Unfortunately, City Skylines just does not do well with terrain. So we could grade every single home site and try that. Not ideal. That's not what really happens. There's a mix of working with the terrain and completely changing the terrain. Generally, siding on working with the terrain. So we're gonna have to take some liberties there. And then the final thing I want to do, based on the comments, is actually change the default style for this community. So European suburbia is a really great style for this. Unfortunately, that means we're going to lose almost every building in here, but I'm going to pause it for a minute and show you why I want to do this. So if you look at this, this is a University City asset, and we have a number of those sneaking their way in. That is less than ideal. As much as I love to see a brand new home with trash and overgrowth, that's not the aesthetic I'm going for here. So we will certainly make the change, and we'll see how this looks. In fact, I'm going to give this just a moment after I change one more thing, and that is this road here. A number of comments talking about how the trees are actually just way too big and blocking the view of City Hall, and if that's going to be the case, why put such a prominent building there? And you know what? I have to say I tend to agree. Unfortunately, this is also in the middle. The only way that I could fix this would be to overbuild the road. I don't love that. So what I might just do is just unfortunately skip the trees altogether. Coming down here, and we'll sneak some in on the side of the road. Because I don't want to overbuild it. That's not the goal. So you got to play within the constraints that the game gives you sometimes. And this is unfortunately a constraint. So let's let this fill in. We'll let all the zoning come back and see how it looks. Now I'm seeing something that I don't like. And I'll tell you what it is. Right off the bat, I see on the coast, we're getting these European suburbia buildings. And they're fine, but I don't think that they are going to level up to the extent that I'm hoping. So I think that what I'm going to do is actually go ahead and create another district right here. So I will create Playa del Mataro Shores, and this will not have that theme. So all the buildings are going to go away again. I'm going to set some policies here. And what we're going to do is try to really get this to level up as high and as quickly as possible. So we're going to have high-tech housing. We will also have lower taxes there for the time being. We'll require electric vehicles. All the little things that we can do to make this an expensive place. Because we want to make sure that this actually fits the vibe of this area. Okay, so those buildings will dezone now, but that's okay. That's what we want. Let's let the rest of this fill in again. Okay, this whole process is going to take a little while, so I'm going to let it go. One of the things that I'm noticing is that our demand is just not that high at this point in time, and adding city services is going to do a great deal. So there are really a couple of things I want to focus on. First of all, I deviated from the plans a little bit here with this road, and we need to get that fixed. So I did not leave room for our future tunnel. So I'm going to pull this over here, line this up, and we'll leave that right there. In fact, I'm going to go a step further, and we will look at our terrain and kind of plan in that tunnel. So the way that we're going to do that, I just want to come through here. Let's grab our terrain height. Now, I'd love to be able to perfectly follow these contour lines if I could. That said, that is going to be quite the tricky endeavor. One way that I could do that, though, would be to come through here and just see where this pops out. And of course, it's going to go right over the top because that makes sense. Now, just looking at the terrain, I want this to curve and end up over here. So we're going to try to follow that terrain height because it's really difficult to figure out exactly where this is going without it. So we'll pop right here and we'll come around and follow this. So this is approximately where we're going to want this to come out. That's right in the center. So we need to turn this tunnel. And this tunnel would not be pre-built like this in a million years, but this is City Skylines. We're going to take some liberties and do what we can to make this good for us. Oh, and that looks pretty rough. Oh, and look at that roller coaster we've got there. That is terrible. So this is one thing that's really difficult to do in the vanilla game. As you can tell, it doesn't matter how much experience you have working with this or how meticulous you are with it. It can just be a difficult process. So finding these other heights and angles can be really helpful. And interestingly, it's telling me that this is actually where I need to pop up. And I don't love that. Okay, so I think we're going to live with that. I don't know that I'm in love with it, but, you know, at a certain point, we just need to get something planned so that we have it for the future, just so that we know and understand that it's a plan. There we go. I know that really does the trick, doesn't it? So now at least we understand where we're heading in the future. So now I want to focus on our transit options, and I want to think back to what we have in the community. You'll remember that we have this lovely bus and metro hub over here, And I think we have an opportunity to extend our line and connect Karen's neighborhood over to Playa del Mataro. So I think it would be good to centrally locate the station. And what we're going to do is use part of the City Hall grounds for this station. Now, I don't think that this would be built this early on in the process, but I do think in the game it will help us spur some of this development. So I want to try to find a good spot for this. And what you can see is it's already not in love with the slopes here, which is unfortunate. I think I would personally love to center this here. You can't really center it because it has an odd number of tiles. However, it does like the side here, and I can live with this. So we are going to make this connection. And again, I think that the most rational way to go about this, rather than tunneling, would be to go above ground. But in light of how much we've already tunneled, I think we're going to continue with it. And we have some plans for these other areas that would be disrupted if we were to tunnel. And this is going to be all, or if we were not to tunnel, if we were to go above ground. So this would be very valuable land, and I want to respect that. And as a result, we will go ahead and go below ground for this one. So we have two different lines coming in here, and I want to make sure that we're picking the correct line to pull in. And if we take a look and remember, we've got this line going out to Myrtle Gardens, and I think we're not going to give Karen the benefit of a subway going all the way to this new neighborhood. We are going to take the Myrtle Gardens line. So let's pop in here. We'll turn all of these off and turn just Myrtle Gardens on. And that will give us the ability to grab this line and pull this on over. Now we'll come back over here and we'll re-add our stops so they're on both sides. And look at that. You can see that most of the riders here are actually going to Sterling Heights. I'm curious. Are they just monster queues there, or what's going on? Why don't we take a look at that? Since we're already over here, there's no reason not to. Holy cow. We have a queue of 1,000 people here. So I'm going to go with the high capacity metro because that has 500 passenger capacity. And I think that we're going to need to crank the number we have 2 stops, one on either side, with 1,000 people queued. That is absolutely crazy. So let's boost this up. We'll go 150 to start. And I'm going to run this for just a second and see if we clear this out. Okay, and I think we're starting to see some progress get made. So 6 vehicles should be enough. Eventually, we're going to start to see these clear out. And we already have this station right here clearing out. This one had a number of issues, as did this one at the end of the line in Sterling Heights. So I feel like we're moving in a positive. We're moving in a positive direction. So I'm going to be okay with this for the time being. I do want to take a look at the Myrtle Gardens line as well. Actually, I want to sort these by passengers one time. So certainly it's not, the Airport Expo Center. I mean, that line is absolutely wild. If we take a look, first of all, it's a large, long line, but it's clearing its queues, so that's good. This line, though, is not. So this is another one, the Burning Conservation line. We're going to need to crank the number of vehicles here as well. I'm going to double the number of vehicles. We had 2. Let's get to 4, because we have queues on this line as well. So I think that we're really underserving transit at this point. We have these excellent new vehicles. Let's get our high capacity metro on these and make sure that we're clearing these. That will just make transportation more effective and efficient across the entire city. And now on the pyrotechnic line, you can see that we're at least starting to clear these queues. So I'm feeling good about that. On our new line, which is, not top 5, but top 10, you see that we have this stop right here, which is, again, kind of this really important node of activity that is overcrowding. So we're going to need to change our vehicle here as well. We probably don't need to go with something as high capacity as the high capacity metro, but I think I'm going to do it anyway. It's just, I would rather have fewer vehicles with higher capacity than more vehicles. And the thought behind that is, it's the reason why bus rapid transit, in certain corridors is better than a standard bus. The most expensive part about running a line is not the vehicle, it's the driver. So the driver is the most expensive part. You got to pay your driver and you got to pay them well. These are professionals and they're valuable. So as a result, if you could have one driver serve 500 people versus 150, that's efficient. So that's what you want to do. So we're going to do that here. And I'd rather have extra capacity on the vehicle in anticipation of future growth rather than have more drivers out there. So now that I have this, I could probably take we'll leave it at 4 vehicles. That's probably fine. I think that the performance on this route will be significantly better though. So we will take that and be happy. So over here though, I don't think we're gonna have 8 passengers a week. That's funny. That'll improve over time, but for the time being, it's not great. It's not great. I do want to think about our other transportation options here though as well, and I want to have a hub. And the reason for that is it's really efficient to be able to have multiple modes of transportation meeting at once. It's space efficient and it allows efficient and effective transfers. So I'm thinking that right here in this particular community, it'd be great to have a ferry and bus stop exchange. We have one of those downtown and it acts as our bus hub. I don't want to place it right here though. That might be the obvious location, put it really close to the downtown area. It's also sullying what otherwise would be a pristine beach that will someday have tourists lining up and down to access this, and a bunch of residents that really don't want this to be the focal point. So we are going to have some utilities over here in the future, and we are going to add this over here kind of as a placeholder for the time being. I really dislike adding this to the beach. The reason for that is it's just, you can't build on sand. And, that's something that I wish I could remove the sand from this build as a result. You'll notice in all of my builds a reluctance to do that. And the reason for that is you'd have to put pillars to actually make it work. And if we're not going to do that, we can't really build here. So just a thing to think about, and something that I do think about and struggle with. So I want to put a key wall here. And the main reason I want to put that here is just so that I can control the way that this is being placed a little bit more. I'll put that right in the center. And we're going to try our best to make this look like it's not on the beach. And that'll be with landscaping. For the time being, though, we're just going to turn it off. But this is where I want this to be. We're going to plan around this and make that work. But I want to get back to this area and start to build out some of these neighborhoods through here and increase the land value. So there's a huge residential demand at this point in time, and we are going to start to fulfill that. So let's improve some of these streets and focus on phase 2. Now, I think naturally we would want to focus on this end. This is going to be a nature preserve on one end, and on the other end, it's going to be the downtown area. It's closest to Verde Beach, and in my opinion, because of all of those factors, this would be the first thing to develop. So this road right here is going to be the dividing line between our tourism area and the residential area in the city. So I'm going to develop this, and we'll upgrade these roads and have to deal with some unfortunate breaking of the infrastructure that we laid in the previous episode. So we'll need to think about that and get that fixed. Okay, so I think we have everything fixed here. I'll try to see if I missed anything as I go through this, but I think it's mostly there now. The one thing that we don't have is our fences, so we're going to get those added back in. And with this, I want to be very thoughtful about this, meticulous on a block by block basis. This is going to be a well thought out community. We're not going to just place a bunch of stuff because zoning is available and the game says it's fine. Just because the game says you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. And I think that if there's any lesson I want you to take away from this particular community, it is that just because you can doesn't mean you should. And, maybe that's just a life lesson in general that, I've had to learn over time. Just because you can doesn't mean that you should. So I'm going to fill in the rest of these blocks with fences, and then we'll get zoning. Okay, and all of this takes a great deal of attention to detail and concentration, but I'm here for it, and I hope that you are too, because I think that the result that we get from this is significantly better than if we were to just go through and zone this all without giving much thought or attention to the way that these lots lay out. And truthfully, in a city, when you are reviewing zoning permits, for instance, or a new development comes in, you don't just look at the initial plat that comes in, you are reviewing the development as every single home is built. So it doesn't stop once you get your initial plan set in. You keep going, you review everything. It's very time consuming, and that's how you get the best results. You have to have that attention to detail and that willingness to be there for it. And that's how you catch things like this, where I had one gigantic block of zoning. Here we've got something very similar where I just didn't finish what I should have done. And now we're going to. And I'm also using these fences to block zoning. I don't want to inadvertently come through here later on and accidentally zone something that I didn't mean to. So I can use those fences to block off the zoning, and I like doing that. To me, it makes a ton of sense. We're going to do that exact same thing in the park here once we get to it. So here we've got a couple more places for homes. However, we also need those fences. So let's get those added. They don't always have to connect to anything either. They can just divide. So there we go. So these are going to fill in fairly rapidly because we have a strong demand for everything here. I want to think about this park in the center of here, because if we look at our land values, they're not great. They're getting better, but they're not great. In general, 42, which I think is about a 10 cell improvement over where we were before. But we can do even better. So let's look at this park and get this built. So I want to build a main gate. I think ideally I'd build that right here. We're going to need to take some liberties because this is not going to play nice with me. And you can see that already. It does not want to center. So there are ways to get fancy about this, but I think I would destroy all of my zoning here. I'm going to try something. Can I make a node? Yeah, it's not having it. I've seen people do this. I think what I really need to do is delete this road and pull this exactly where I want it to be. And that's just not what I'm looking to do. So it's going to be just a little bit off center. We're going to have to let things go. And that is part of the vanilla experience. Sometimes you just got to let things go, as painful as it is. So this park here is going to be fairly benign. We're not going to do a ton here. Some landscaping, some seating, but we don't want it to be overdone, overblown. So I'm going to place a couple of gates here. So these are the side gates. And I think I'm going to leave this one alone because that's going to be more difficult to make look nice. We can snap there easily enough. Problem is, that's not even centered completely, so we're going to have to live with a bit of imperfection. There's also the opportunity to connect up here if we really wanted to. Interestingly, I can't tell. Do we have that? We have the same opportunity over here. Why don't we make it? And that will be our secondary connection. To make this work, we're going to need to have our roads upgraded in a very precise location, and we're going to get very lucky. And that's going to work out really well for us. So we have a crosswalk there because I changed the roadway type. So now someone could walk directly through the park. So this park might actually generate a ton of revenue for us eventually if we left this a park that generated revenue. I don't like that in this particular location. It's a city park. I think that at a national park or a state park, that makes a ton of sense. But here, not so much. So we do have some terrain things happening here. And I want to make it look as good as I can. There's going to be an element that I can't really do much about. So we'll have to use landscaping to fix that. We could certainly try to remove this and do a bit of grading. The problem is these self-leveling paths are just doing such a great job of doing their job that we are going to suffer a little bit with this. Yeah, and you see that's not any better. So we'll just need to deal with a bit of that with landscaping. And truthfully, there's not going to be a lot happening in this park anyway. Like I said, maybe a couple of benches, and it's mostly landscaping and maybe some gazebos that I want to do here, that I want to add here to make the space a welcoming place, but not overdone. And you got to remember that not every park in a city is going to be a 5-star park. So I know that is where the game drives you, to have parks that are really overdone. But we don't have to do that. That's an option. Now I do think it would be fun to have a little bit of character in this area, and we'll imagine that there is a neighborhood kind of food truck type offering here. And we can set that up on the side of the park here. And I'll stick with these vehicles that look like they are movable. That's the reason I didn't want to go with this one. This one is more of a, I'd say more of a farmer's market type stand. We can have that, but I want to put that somewhere else. And maybe not in this park. So the other thing that we could do is certainly go ahead and place hedges or something of that nature. And maybe along the sides, I will just a bit. And then from there, I think I'm just going to landscape this park out. We don't need to go wild with it. Try to cover up some of the lumpies and bumpies with some rough landscaping or something of that nature. It's a little tough here. Maybe we'll have a couple of these trees off on the side to frame that space. And we'll leave a little bit of imperfection or some small bushes or grasses. Oh, that'll do the trick for us. That'll do the trick. Oh, that's really tall. It's really tall, but wow, look at that step up there. That would be a bit extreme. I guess you're gonna fall right off the front, but we're gonna leave it. And this obviously isn't a cherry park. It doesn't have a fee. We're gonna make this Palm Park. So there we go. And you start to see that this is doing a little bit more. And apparently we've also not put water pipes over here. It's doing a little bit more to bring some life into this area. We also need to landscape our new neighborhoods, our new blocks. This is all one neighborhood, but these blocks look a bit sparse right now. So let's go ahead and place some trees in here. I love using this live oak, and they're very large. They're native to places like the southern U.S., where this is very well where Verde Beach could be. Florida and California are the places I've referenced. Both of those places are within the growing zone of a live oak, which I believe is 7 to 10. So it to me seems like a rational approach to place these in the community. And I think it's good to think about that. We wouldn't want to put a boreal pine in here. Wouldn't make any sense. And we just need to be cognizant of the landscaping that's appropriate here. And we want to use it in a way that is appropriate for the area. And these are really majestic trees. If you've ever seen one, they just look ancient. It's just really, they're fantastic. Okay, so we've basically made sure that every lot has a tree or two. And just look at that. I know this is a slow grow here, but it feels so good in my opinion to put this level of detail and emphasis into a place, because that's what makes it feel real. That's what separates just growth for the sake of growth from doing something with a bit of purpose that feels just a little bit better, a little bit more natural. In this area down here, I do want to fill it in with a bit of tropical growth. I feel like that would be welcomed in the commercial area. You could certainly place it in the residential area as well, but I feel like you tend to see it more in this commercial type area. So we've got some really ugly stuff here, and as much as I'd love to place tropical plants here, this is really where I feel like some of the oaks shine, because they can hide this kind of thing. This is a zonable area though, so I'm going to hope that this fills in. And let's continue a little bit more residential growth. I think I'm going to do a couple of blocks as part of this, and then we'll leave it there because I don't want this to feel like I'm trying to rush through these areas, because that's not the case. In fact, I think that we should go and take as long as we need to on these areas. Okay, so that's about as far as I want to go. So I'm just going to fill this in one more time and get these going. And I really feel like we've done a lot in terms of bringing life into this area. But we've got some more transit stuff to do, and I want to get to that before we end this thing today. And because of that, I'm going to kind of go through this kind of quickly. So I've noticed that I feel bad about this. We have very few commercial buildings, and this one's oriented to the wrong street, so it's gone. So, sorry, commercial building. Please come back. We will miss you. Okay, so that's about the extent for Phase 2. Phase 3 will fill in the rest of this and work a little bit on this area, although we've got some things to think about. One of the comments that I saw that really made a lot of sense to me is, we've got this forest that is now bisected by this road, and it'd be nice to fill in some of this forest, maybe extend it through and have a wildlife overpass. So let me know if that is something you want to see. I'm happy to think about that and put that together if that's something that you are interested in. So how are we doing now? We have 69 passengers a week. Nice. We're doing a lot better in terms of our utilization of that metro. That's, this is a low density community. If we look at it, we've got about 1,000 people who live here. It's not very big, and our value is not very strong. Well, let's see. It's actually looking better. It's looking better, and that is really a testament to the value that transit brings. So let's do a little bit more. I want to focus on this, get some bus routes into the community, and get a ferry running over here. I think it's going to be really important. So we've got this road coming over here. And just reasonably, this probably wouldn't be developed until the utilities campus is developed, but we are going to take liberties because that's what we are doing in this little community. So let's rough this in. And we'll connect that up. Now, again, I really dislike building things along the beach. You would need to have concrete piers going down to be able to build anything along this coast, and that is a costly endeavor. This is transit. I wish that there was a better way to do this reasonably. What I'd really like to do is actually get rid of the sand here in the game, the texture, because there are a number of places like that in Verde Beach where I've just had to swallow my pride and build on sand. And that's happened a number of times in the last build. Now this is a challenge. I lowered this to make it look rational, and we've had a number of tsunamis. I'll tell you the first thing that's going to get destroyed in a tsunami. This is going to look wonderful. If you look at the height here, that is totally reasonable, rational. Might be the only ferry stop that we have that makes sense. and it's also the most dangerous one that we have. So something to keep in mind. I want to decorate around this just so that it doesn't look so weird and out of place. So I'm going to put some palm trees along here and then add some bushes and some foliage and try to make it look a little more rational, but it's not good. This is it, I don't believe in having a whole bunch of development on sand. It's not a good thing. Okay, and the other thing I want to do is bring this out even further and try to cover up the fact that it's the beach with some foliage and some landscaping around here. So just try to make it look like we've done something to address this, to retain these weak soils. And what we've done is we've landscaped the heck out of it. We've got retaining, we've removed some of the sands that were here. We're trying to make sure we don't lose our soil by including ample landscaping along here. Now, I don't know how reasonable this is, but it feels good to me. So we're going to go with it. Now, if you do work in construction, let me know. Or if you're an engineer, let me know how crazy what I'm doing is. I kind of like the way it looks, though. So even if it's not reasonable, I just kind of enjoy the aesthetic appearance of it. It feels like an interesting place. Now I'm going to have to ruin that because I'm realizing, how do I get power here? I don't know. So that's going to be a thing that we need to contend with. Right away, there it is. Chirping at me about power. Rightfully so. Yeah, look at that. That stinks. So we are going to pull this up temporarily. More temporary power lines, which I absolutely despise, but there's nothing I can do about it. Can't bury lines, so we'll just run them along the beach. Beautiful. Just what everyone wants to see. Well, it's not all about aesthetics all the time. So now we need to get our ferries out here. What we need to do first is pop in here and draw a ferry line. And I think that what we're going to do is try to ping back and forth just to the jetty in downtown. And this also makes me want to improve this curve in here. And now hopefully, rather than going up and coming back, this line will correct itself. Yeah, that's what it's going to do. So that's a much better movement through there. So this I think is important for tourism. I don't know that many residents are going to take it, especially if we don't add bus service here. So this is going to be a big opportunity for us because there are lots of areas in a low density community where it just doesn't make sense to have local bus service. And we also have this high quality connection down here that we should take advantage of. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to ping this back and forth between the downtown and then have a bunch of radial routes emanating from there. So you could take a bus, come down here, and then we'll have a couple of routes, and truthfully at this point maybe only two, that circulate around the two halves of the community. And I think that this little route does a good job of blanketing this entire community. So an important thing to consider is that people can walk to stops and not every stop will have passengers. So you can have more local bus stops. They can be a block or two apart when necessary. I try to keep them 2 to 3, maybe 4 blocks apart. And unless it's an express service, you can have a lot of stops. You're spreading out that opportunity. And you don't need to cover every single street with a bus route people can walk. So we're going to do the exact same thing on this side, even though this side is considerably less developed. One of the wonderful things about bus routes is that they can change over time. So we will get this going, kind of mirror what we did on the other side. And eventually this side of the community, we'll call it the west side, is going to need more service. It's just larger in terms of its size, generally. And we're reusing a lot of these bus stops. And the reason that we're doing that, there's a couple of reasons. So first of all, bus stop infrastructure, especially if it's high quality infrastructure, can be expensive. So if we could reuse that and have one shelter, that's ideal. If you can have one shelter with multiple stops serving it, you can transfer between different routes. So it's just a kind of an efficient way of handling things in reality. Now we know that the game is not reality, and sometimes what is great in reality doesn't work so well here. We're gonna have to keep an eye on that because that could lead to lots of backups. We will have to see. I want to get some trees in these yards though, and we'll get moving on that right now because we've got some spots like this where, wow. Fry guys, you're killing me with the lumpies and bumpies. You guys decided to grade like that? That's unacceptable. And there we go. I think that looks a ton better. And the city's starting to feel like more of a place that has some thought behind it. I do want to fix the lumpies and bumpies that we have along the coast. They're kind of driving me crazy. So let's go ahead and do a bit of that. There we go. And we've had this dark area here as well. I'm going to try to play with this again. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I'm going to try because I can't ever let things go. So we're going to get rid of these dark spots if it's the last thing I do. Or I'll need to swallow my pride, one of the two. It's a little better. It's not great. We've got some other work to do back here, so I should probably hold off until then. Now, interestingly, you can see that the values here on the shore have already shot up to 51. And what we see is that there's actually 244 people living on the shore and 1,000 living in all of these areas, which is endlessly fascinating to me because if you look at this, that just shows you how important it is to get these homes leveled up. So just in this building, we have 4 households, 6 in this one, 3 here, 4, 2. So it's just a different ball game. When you get these leveled up, you get more households, more people, and you can see how things can skew. But on the coast, I mean, that does make sense to me. Share that view with lots of people. So with that, I think that we have done some really great. What is going on here? Is this broken? I'm confused. Let's take a look at Myrtle Gardens. What is going on? So, for whatever reason, 15 people here. And this is just really slow. Let's change it over to the S-Bahn, which I think is one of the faster trains. Now, you can't see any of this stuff, so you got to kind of just look at it and truth it yourself. But from my experience in kind of toying around with these, that's what I've seen is that the S-Bahns, even though they're lower capacity than maybe some of these other ones, they're just very fast. So hopefully that will compensate and get some people moving through here. And as I look, we don't have a lot of people at any of these stops anyway, so hopefully having these faster trains will be a big help. I also want to take a look before we pop out at some of our other routes that we've modified. And holy cow, look at this. We have the conservation line, which is now number 2, as we have increased our capacity and speed. And just a refresher, if we take a look at this line. So this particular line is very important. It connects this little transfer center to this transfer center. So it's part of that. It's part of that whole line that we have with the Pyrotechnic Sterling Estates. So it's probably the same people transferring between the two of these to get from downtown. So they're probably using a couple of lines. So we might want to think about that at some point in time. We don't really have a direct line going all the way from downtown in this transfer center down here all the way to this transfer center. Part of that is we just have a lot of things happening here. So to get here now, if you wanted to get from downtown to here, it's 1 train or 1 subway, 2, 3. That is not ideal. Even if those are interlined. Interlined meaning that it is one vehicle that changes its number partway through the trip. So you're not physically leaving a vehicle, but the number is changing. That could be a way that this is accomplished, but it's likely not. Just being reasonable and realistic with it. I'm really excited to see the number of passengers that we've had increase. And that tells me that at some point soon, I just need to go through all of these and make sure that everything makes sense. Because we might be leaving some passenger boardings on the table. We certainly left about 1,000 on the table because our new routes aren't so successful that they're the reason that this is all going down. So we also have a couple of new routes that we've formed, and we really need to name them. Look at this. Our new line here. This isn't a new line. This is an old line that we never named. And it has an inappropriate bus. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to save buses, and why don't we focus on that in greater detail in a coming episode. And for the time being, why don't we just take a moment, admire what we've done, zoom in, and have a brief city tour. That was a great city tour, but we need a little bit more, and I think it would be nice to take the ferry on back to our new community and admire the sights and sounds of the water. This is ideal. This is wonderful. This would be a great place to live, and you could take this ferry, hop on a bus, get right downtown, and I think that this would be a very popular place to live as a result of that. Transportation makes certain lifestyle choices possible. It also makes it viable to live without a car. And one thing that we didn't do here that I regret and that we're going to fix before we end this is I didn't add bike lanes here. And that's a missed opportunity because we have bike lanes up and down the coast here, which is part of the game plan. We want this to be a very bike-friendly island. And if we ensure that we have these, that enables one additional way to get here. Now I'm curious, 9 passengers here? So this is getting some use. Maybe it's not extreme, but we got some utilization. We got these folks getting off, and I assume they're coming to the ferry because I don't know what else they do here. Yeah, they're coming in here. And on the ferry, it's empty. But I assume that these folks are going to get right on. Let's double check. I just want to make sure that I'm not going crazy and that this is actually, yeah. They hop right on here. They're going downtown. Or they're going to the Hamilton. Oh, no. You're leaving them behind. Oh, bad ferry. That is unacceptable. That driver did not want to do their job today. And now these folks here, who is it? You left children behind. I'm sorry, Albert Richardson. We're going to talk to that ferry operator. That's unacceptable. Raymond Cooper, too. Going to tent 2. Interesting. Let's take a look at this. Going to the elementary school. Uneducated child at the Butler residence is going to the elementary school via... Oh, no. Student there. He's going to Seaside Refreshments. He is going to the Hamilton Jetty. That is wonderful. Love that. Here, tent 2, that's in Burning Palms. I got it. And let's see where this other person's going. Going home. The Hickory residence, they were just visiting. Maybe visiting a friend. I'm not sure. We don't really know where they went. Same thing here. People going back to Verde Beach. Interesting. Leaving the city. Just a tourist. High wealth tourist. And this Jeremy White resides here and is going to the elementary school. Interesting. He's a high school student going to the elementary school in downtown Verde Beach. Near this, which apparently has been destroyed. Okay, well, I guess whatever you want to do, friend, whatever you want to do. I think we're going to leave it here, though. I think that we're making some good progress on this city. It is looking much better and much more reasonable, and we are going to continue to work on this. I do want to know, though, I've got some ideas for where I want to go next in this build, but if you have specific things you want me to focus on next, I will give you a couple of options. We've got this nature reserve and the overpass between the forests, or the wildlife overpass. We get the rest of the neighborhood to build out here, and we have to look at all of our bus routes throughout the city. And I want to know in the comments, let me know which one you would prefer me to do next. And I'm very excited to see which one that is. Hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, please hit the like button. If you aren't subscribed, please consider doing so. And I can't wait to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.